A millionaire CEO fired everyone who laughed at the single dad. Then made him partner. But when jealousy and lies threaten to destroy everything, will this broken father's fight for dignity and his daughter's future end in triumph or total ruin? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The kitchen clock ticked softly as Ethan Cole leaned over his daughter's math homework, his finger tracing along the numbers on the well-worn worksheet. The small apartment's yellow light cast warm shadows across their faces as they huddled together at the scratched wooden table. "See, sweetie? When you multiply these numbers, remember to carry the 1, Ethan explained gently, watching Lily's face scrunch up in concentration. "Oh, I get it now, Daddy." Lily's eyes lit up as she quickly wrote down the answer. Her pink pencil moved with newfound confidence across the paper. Ethan smiled, his heart swelling with pride. Even after the longest days, helping Lily with her homework was always the highlight of his evening. He glanced at the clock. 8:30 p.m. Almost time for his night shift. "Great job, sweetheart. Time for bed now." He started gathering up the scattered papers and pencils. "But I'm not tired," Lily protested, though a yawn betrayed her words. Her long brown hair was already falling out of its neat ponytail, a sure sign of a long day. "Nice try, kiddo." Ethan chuckled, helping her up from the chair. "Remember, you have school tomorrow, and Mrs. Martinez is picking you up early." Their bedtime routine was well practiced: teeth brushing, face washing, and one last trip to the bathroom. Lily's room was small but cozy, with walls covered in her colorful drawings and a shelf full of second-hand books they'd collected together. "Can you tell me about Mom?" Lily asked softly, as Ethan tucked her favorite purple blanket around her shoulders. It was a frequent request, one that still made his heart ache even after 3 years. "Your mom," Ethan began, settling on the edge of her bed, "was the bravest person I ever knew. She could make anyone smile, just like you do." He smoothed back Lily's hair, seeing Sarah's features in their daughter's face. "And she loved drawing too. That's where you get your talent from." Lily snuggled deeper into her pillow. "Did she draw inventions like you do?" "No, she drew beautiful pictures of people and places." Ethan's voice grew softer. "But she always believed in my crazy ideas, just like you do." "They're not crazy, Daddy. They're amazing." Lily's words were interrupted by another yawn. Ethan leaned down and kissed her forehead. "Sweet dreams, Princess. I love you to the moon and back." "Love you more," Lily mumbled, her eyes already closing. After making sure her nightlight was on, Ethan quietly closed her door and headed to the living room. He grabbed his worn jacket from the hook by the door and checked his uniform pockets, keys, ID badge, the small notebook he always carried for sketching ideas during his breaks. The night air bit at his face as he locked the apartment door. Their building wasn't in the best neighborhood, but it was what he could afford on a janitor's salary. The streetlights cast long shadows as he walked the 6 blocks to the bus stop, his breath forming small clouds in the cold. The late-night bus was nearly empty as it wound through the city streets. Ethan stared out the window at the passing buildings, his reflection ghostly in the glass. The closer they got to downtown, the taller the buildings became, until finally the bus stopped in front of Hartman Industries' towering glass headquarters. The lobby was eerily quiet as Ethan unlocked the service entrance. His footsteps echoed across the marble floor as he made his way to the janitor's closet. The night security guard, Bill, gave him a friendly nod from behind his desk. "Evening, Ethan. How's Lily doing?" "Good, thanks. Aced her spelling test yesterday." Ethan managed a tired smile as he wheeled out his cleaning cart. "That girl's going places," Bill said warmly, "just like her dad should be." Ethan just nodded, not sure how to respond. He'd learned long ago to accept his place in life, a widowed janitor doing his best to raise his daughter. Dreams were luxury items he couldn't afford anymore. The first floor was always his starting point. As he methodically mopped the lobby's marble floors, the portraits of past CEOs seemed to watch him from their positions of honor on the walls. Distinguished men in expensive suits, their expressions stern and confident. Success seemed to radiate from their painted faces. Pausing in his work, Ethan found himself staring at their portraits. These were men who had built something lasting, who had changed lives with their vision and determination. His hand unconsciously moved to the notebook in his pocket, where pages of his own ideas lay hidden. Sketches of devices that could make life easier for people like Sarah, who had struggled so much in her final months. The mop handle felt heavy in his hands as reality settled back in. He was just the night janitor, the invisible man who cleaned up after the important people went home. His drawings would stay in his notebook, his dreams locked away where they couldn't hurt anyone. The marble floors reflected the dim night lighting, now spotless from his careful attention. Soon, expensive shoes would track in tomorrow's dirt, and he would clean it again, the endless cycle of his nights continuing without change. The portraits of success looked down on him, silent reminders of a world he could only glimpse from the outside, never touch. He had a daughter to think about, after all. Dreams didn't pay the rent or put food on the table. But still, as he stood there in the quiet lobby, his reflection faint in the polished floor, he couldn't help wondering if there could be more to life than this. If somehow, somewhere, his ideas might matter to someone other than an 8-year-old girl who still believed her daddy could do anything. The alarm's gentle chime pulled Ethan from his brief sleep. 5:30 a.m. His body ached from last night's work, but he pushed himself up from the worn mattress. The morning routine was sacred. These precious moments with Lily kept him going through the long hours. He shuffled to the small kitchen, running his fingers through his disheveled dark hair. The coffee maker gurgled to life, filling the modest apartment with its rich aroma. Ethan pulled out Lily's favorite lunchbox, decorated with colorful butterflies, and began assembling her lunch with careful attention. "Turkey sandwich, no crusts," he mumbled to himself, cutting the bread diagonally just the way she liked it. He added a small bag of baby carrots, an apple he'd carefully sliced and reassembled to prevent browning, and a chocolate chip cookie he'd baked during their weekend together. The coffee maker beeped, and he poured himself a large cup, adding a splash of milk. "Lilybug?" he called softly, walking down the short hallway to her room. "Time to wake up, sweetheart." Her room was small but filled with warmth, walls painted a gentle yellow, drawings taped everywhere, and a bookshelf overflowing with library books. Lily lay curled under her purple comforter, brown curls splayed across her pillow. "5 more minutes, Daddy," she mumbled, pulling the blanket over her head. Ethan sat on the edge of her bed, gently rubbing her back. "Remember what today is? Show and tell at the daycare." Lily's eyes popped open, suddenly alert. "My notebook!" She scrambled out of bed, rushing to her desk where her precious blue spiral notebook lay. The cover was worn, filled with her careful writing. "Daddy's Inventions by Lily Cole. Breakfast first, then we'll make sure you have everything ready," Ethan said, helping her pick out clothes for the day. A green sweater and jeans. In the kitchen, Ethan made quick work of their breakfast. Oatmeal with brown sugar and banana slices for Lily, another cup of coffee for himself. He watched as she spooned up her breakfast, her eyes still heavy with sleep but brightening as she woke up. "Did you finish the drawing of your floor cleaner thing?" Lily asked between bites. Ethan smiled, remembering the rough sketch he'd shown her of his idea for a more efficient floor cleaning system. "It's just doodles, honey. Nothing special." "But it is special," Lily protested. "You're always thinking of ways to make things better, like my lunchbox holder that keeps my sandwich from getting squished." His heart swelled at her unwavering faith in him. He'd crafted that simple plastic insert from scraps, but to Lily, it might as well have been magic. The drive to Hartman Industries took 15 minutes through the awakening city. The massive glass building reflected the pink morning sky, its windows gleaming. Ethan parked in his usual spot in the far corner of the lot, helping Lily gather her backpack and lunch. "Remember, I'll pick you up from daycare before my shift starts tonight," he said, taking her hand as they walked toward the building's side entrance where the company daycare was located. "I know, Daddy. I'm going to show everyone your notebook today." Lily clutched the blue spiral notebook to her chest with her free hand. "Just maybe keep it simple, okay?" Ethan felt a familiar twinge of anxiety. He knew how people looked at the janitor, with dismissal at best, contempt at worst. They approached the daycare entrance, passing through the building's lobby, where early arriving executives strode past in expensive suits. Lily skipped alongside him, her backpack bouncing, completely oblivious to the social hierarchy around them. Just as they reached the daycare doors, a commotion near the elevator caught their attention. A group of well-dressed employees parted like a wave, and through their midst walked Daniel Hartman himself, the CEO Ethan had only ever seen in portraits and company videos. Hartman was tall and distinguished, his silver hair perfectly styled, his suit immaculate. He carried himself with the confidence of a man who had built an empire from the ground up. Ethan instinctively pulled Lily closer, hoping to slip by unnoticed. But Lily, with all the innocent enthusiasm of childhood, had other plans. As Hartman passed near them, she took a step forward, bumping right into his leg. The CEO stopped, looking down at her with raised eyebrows. "Oh, you're the man from the big picture in the lobby," Lily exclaimed, her face lighting up with recognition. Ethan's heart nearly stopped. "Lily," he whispered, trying to pull her back, but she was already in full show and tell mode. "My daddy cleans your floors," she announced proudly, holding up her blue notebook. "But he makes the best inventions." The silence that followed felt endless to Ethan. Then someone in the group of employees snickered. Another joined in. Soon, several were openly laughing, their amusement echoing off the lobby's marble floors. "A janitor inventor?" someone muttered between laughs. "That's a new one." Ethan's face burned with embarrassment. He wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor he spent his nights cleaning. He could feel the weight of every amused stare, every smirk, every whispered comment. Lily's smile began to fade as she sensed something was wrong, and that hurt worst of all, watching her innocent pride turn to confusion. The sketchbook hit the polished floor with a soft thud as Lily bumped into Daniel. Papers scattered across the marble tiles like autumn leaves. The little girl's eyes went wide with worry, her small hands flying to her mouth. "I'm so sorry," she gasped, dropping to her knees to gather the loose pages. Daniel waved off his assistant, who stepped forward to help. Instead, he knelt down himself, his expensive suit creasing as he reached for the nearest sheet of paper. The laughter from the group of executives nearby still echoed through the lobby, but Daniel barely noticed. His attention was caught by the detailed technical drawing on the page in his hand. It was a medical device, sketched with remarkable precision. Notes filled the margins, explaining how each component would work together. The design showed careful consideration for both function and cost-effectiveness. Daniel's eyes narrowed as he studied the innovative solutions presented in the sketch. He picked up another page. This one showed a different invention, a wheelchair modification that could help users navigate stairs more easily. The attention to detail was impressive, but what truly caught Daniel's eye was the human element. These weren't just cold mechanical designs, they were solutions to real problems that people faced every day. Ethan stepped forward, his face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm sorry, sir. They're nothing really. Just some ideas I sketched during my breaks." Daniel held up his hand, silencing Ethan as he continued to flip through the pages. Each new design showed the same careful balance of practicality and compassion. He recognized something in these sketches, the same spark of innovation he'd had when he was younger, before he built his empire. The group of executives had moved closer, their amusement turning to curiosity at their CEO's obvious interest. One of them, a senior VP named Thompson, cleared his throat. "Sir, your morning meeting is scheduled to start in 5 minutes." Daniel stood slowly, still holding the sketchbook. He looked at Ethan, really looked at him, taking in the worn work uniform, the calloused hands, and the quiet dignity in the man's bearing despite the mockery he'd just endured. "How long have you worked here, Mr. Cole?" Daniel asked, his voice carrying clearly through the lobby. Ethan straightened his shoulders slightly. 3 years, sir. Night shift maintenance." "And these designs?" Daniel held up the sketchbook. "How long have you been developing these?" "Ever since my wife." Ethan's voice caught for a moment. He glanced at Lily, who had moved to stand close to his side. "Ever since she got sick, I started thinking about ways to make things better, easier for people in similar situations." The smugness had faded from the executives' faces, replaced by uncertainty as they watched their CEO's reaction. Daniel's expression had grown increasingly serious. "Mr. Cole," Daniel said, his voice taking on a tone that made everyone in the lobby stand a little straighter. "These designs show remarkable insight and innovation, the kind of thinking we desperately need more of in this company." He turned to face the group of executives who had been laughing earlier. His eyes were steel now, all trace of morning pleasantries gone. "What I don't need in this company are people who mock honest work or belittle others to make themselves feel important." The lobby had gone completely silent. Even the security guard at his desk seemed to be holding his breath. "Thompson," Daniel said sharply, "you and Roberts clear out your desks, now." The two executives stared at him in shock. Thompson's face had gone pale. "Sir? I don't understand." "Let me be very clear," Daniel's voice cut through the air like a blade. "No one insults a man fighting for his family on my watch. Not in my company. Not ever." He turned back to Ethan, who stood frozen in place, one arm protectively around Lily's shoulders. "Mr. Cole, I apologize for the behavior you've witnessed here today. It does not reflect the values of Hartman Industries." Daniel handed the sketchbook back to Ethan, but kept one of the drawings. "I'd like to discuss these designs with you further, if you're willing. My assistant will set up a meeting." The lobby had erupted into whispers. Thompson and Roberts stood rooted to the spot, their faces a mixture of shock and humiliation. Daniel fixed them with a final stern look. "I believe I told you to clear your desks. Security will escort you out when you're done." He turned to address the remaining onlookers. "Let this be a lesson to everyone here. The measure of a person isn't in their title or position. It's in their character and what they contribute to the world around them." Lily beamed up at her father, who still seemed stunned by the sudden turn of events. Daniel gave them both a warm smile before his professional demeanor returned. He straightened his tie and nodded to his assistant. "Now, about that morning meeting," he said, heading toward the elevators. The crowd quickly dispersed, leaving Ethan and Lily standing in the lobby, the sketchbook clutched tightly in Ethan's hands, as the echo of Daniel's words still hung in the air. Daniel's office occupied the entire top floor of Hartman Industries. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline, still draped in early morning shadows. Ethan shifted uncomfortably in his chair, feeling completely out of place in his gray janitor's uniform. The leather seat beneath him probably cost more than his monthly rent. "Cream or sugar?" Daniel asked, standing at a sleek coffee station in the corner of his office. "Black is fine, sir," Ethan replied quietly, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. He couldn't help but notice how his work boots had tracked small marks on the pristine carpet. The urge to get down and clean them was almost overwhelming. Daniel returned with 2 steaming mugs, setting one in front of Ethan. "Please, call me Daniel." He settled into his chair behind the massive oak desk, Ethan's sketchbook laid out before him. "These designs of yours, they're remarkable." Ethan's face flushed. "They're just doodles, really. Something to pass the time during my breaks." "Doodles?" Daniel raised an eyebrow, turning the sketchbook around. "This wheelchair design could revolutionize mobility for thousands of people. And this medical monitoring device, the simplicity is brilliant. You've found ways to cut production costs while improving functionality." Ethan stared into his coffee, struggling to accept the praise. I see problems that need solving. My wife." He paused, swallowing hard. Before she passed, there were so many things that could have made her life easier. The hospital equipment was complicated, expensive. I kept thinking there had to be better ways. Daniel nodded slowly, his expression softening. "Loss has a way of opening our eyes to what matters." He stood up and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. "You know, I started this company in my garage. Everyone said I was crazy, that I'd fail. But I saw problems that needed solving too." The silence stretched between them as Daniel gazed out at the city. Ethan sipped his coffee, noting how different it tasted from the break room blend he was used to. "Tell me about your daughter," Daniel said suddenly, turning back to face him. "Lily?" A small smile touched Ethan's lips. "She's everything to me. Smart as a whip, kind-hearted. She's the reason I keep going, why I work so hard." "She's proud of you," Daniel observed. "I saw it in her eyes this morning." Ethan's throat tightened. "She shouldn't have said anything. I don't want her getting teased because her dad's the janitor. No? Daniel's voice was firm. She should be proud. And after seeing these designs, I understand why. He returned to his desk, pulling out a folder. I have a proposition for you, Ethan. Ethan's heart began to race as Daniel laid out several documents. We're launching a new medical technology division, Daniel explained. Your designs align perfectly with our goals. I want you to assist on the project, working directly with our development team. The room seemed to spin slightly. Ethan gripped his coffee mug tighter. Sir, Daniel, I don't have any formal training. No degree. I wouldn't know where to start. You started here. Daniel tapped the sketchbook. These designs show more practical understanding than half my engineering team. Sometimes the best innovations come from people who've lived with the problems they're trying to solve. Ethan set his mug down, his hand trembling slightly. I can't. I'm grateful, but what if I fail? Lily depends on me. I can't risk losing our stability, her security. You'd keep your current position until the project proves viable, Daniel assured him. This would be additional work with additional pay, a chance to see if your ideas can become reality. The opportunity seemed too good to be true. Ethan thought of Lily's face this morning, beaming with pride despite the laughter. He thought of his late wife, how she'd always believed in him, but the fear of failure, of disappointment, sat heavy in his chest. I need time to think about it, he managed finally. Daniel nodded, understanding in his eyes. Of course. Take the weekend. Talk it over with Lily. He stood, extending his hand. But remember, Ethan, sometimes the biggest risk is not taking one at all. Ethan shook his hand, mumbled his thanks, and made his way to the elevator. His mind was spinning with possibilities and fears as he descended back to the familiar basement level. The offer weighed on his heart like an anchor, both thrilling and terrifying. He had decisions to make, and for the first time in years, his future felt uncertain in ways that both excited and scared him. The setting sun cast long shadows through the glass doors of Hartman Industries as Ethan made his rounds with his cleaning cart. His mind was still spinning from the morning's events, the sketches, Daniel's unexpected defense, and that life-changing offer still hanging in the air. The usually quiet corridors felt different tonight, charged with an unfamiliar tension. As he approached the executive wing, voices drifted from around the corner. Ethan slowed his steps, the wheels of his cart squeaking to a halt. "This is ridiculous," a man's voice hissed. 20 years I've worked here and Hartman's going soft over some janitor's scribbles? Did you see Thompson and Richards getting escorted out? Another voice replied. All because they laughed at the guy's kid. Since when does Hartman care about hurt feelings? Ethan's chest tightened. He recognized the voices, Marcus Weber and James Phillips, both senior executives who'd been with the company longer than he'd been pushing a mop. The old man's lost it, Weber continued. Probably sees himself in this Cole character. You know his whole self-made man story. The words dripped with contempt. Well, we need to put the janitor in his place before this gets out of hand, Phillips said. Hartman's pet project or not, he needs to learn where he belongs. Ethan's hands gripped the handle of his cart until his knuckles turned white. The familiar weight of self-doubt settled on his shoulders, heavier than any cleaning equipment he'd ever carried. I heard he's a widower, Weber added with a cruel chuckle. Maybe that's why Hartman's going soft. Some sob story about a dead wife and a kid to support. The mention of his late wife sent a surge of anger through Ethan's body. He wanted to step around that corner, to defend her memory, to stand up for himself. But the old fears held him back. Instead, he quietly backed away, pushing his cart in the opposite direction. For the rest of his shift, their words echoed in his head as he cleaned. Each floor he mopped, each trash can he emptied, each window he wiped became a reminder of their contempt. The sketches in his notebook, drawings of devices that could help people like his wife in her final days, suddenly seemed childish and naive. The night stretched on endlessly. When Ethan finally clocked out, his uniform felt heavier than usual, weighted down by the executive's threats and his own growing anxiety. The streetlights flickered as he walked to his car, casting intermittent shadows that seemed to mock his dreams of something better. The drive home was a blur of yellow streetlights and quiet radio music. He parked in front of their modest apartment building, sitting in the car for a moment to compose himself. Inside, Mrs. Martinez from next door was watching Lily, as she often did during his night shifts. "Daddy!" Lily's face lit up as he opened the door. She launched herself into his arms, her small frame colliding with his tired body. Despite his exhaustion, Ethan managed a genuine smile. Lily had that effect on him. "Thank you again, Mrs. Martinez," Ethan said to their elderly neighbor as she gathered her knitting. "De nada," she replied with a warm smile. Lily is always an angel. After Mrs. Martinez left, Lily bounced on her toes, clutching her favorite book. "Can we read a story, Daddy? Please?" Ethan looked at his daughter's hopeful face, her eyes shining with the same brightness her mother's had. The weight of the executive's threats pressed against his chest, but he pushed it aside. "Of course, sweetheart. Go get ready for bed, and I'll be right there." While Lily changed into her pajamas, Ethan splashed cold water on his face in the bathroom. The mirror reflected his tired eyes, the worry lines around his mouth. But when he heard Lily calling from her room, he straightened his shoulders and fixed a smile on his face. Lily's room was a small sanctuary of childhood dreams. Paper butterflies hung from the ceiling, a craft project they'd done together on a rainy Sunday. Her mother's photo sat on the nightstand, forever young and smiling. "Ready, Daddy?" Lily patted the space beside her on the narrow bed. Ethan settled next to her, taking the worn copy of The Little Engine That Could from her hands. It had been her mother's favorite book to read to her, and now it was their nightly ritual. I think I can," Ethan read, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Lily snuggled closer, her head resting against his arm as she followed along with the familiar words. The little blue engine in the story faced its own mountain of doubt, just as he faced his, but as Ethan read about its determination and ultimate triumph, he felt Lily's breathing grow slower and more rhythmic. By the time he finished the story, she was fast asleep, her face peaceful and untroubled by the adult worries that plagued her father. Ethan carefully extracted himself from the bed, tucking the blanket around her shoulders. He stood there for a moment, watching his daughter sleep, drawing strength from her innocent faith in him. Whatever challenges lay ahead at Hartman Industries, whatever schemes Weber and Phillips might be planning, he would face them, not for himself, but for the little girl who believed her daddy could do anything. He leaned down and kissed Lily's forehead, then quietly turned off the light, leaving only her butterfly nightlight glowing softly in the darkness. Morning sunlight streamed through the small kitchen window of Ethan's modest apartment, warming the worn wooden table where he sat with Lily. She spooned cereal into her mouth, her legs swinging beneath her chair, while Ethan nursed his second cup of coffee. "Daddy," Lily said between bites, milk dripping from her spoon, "I told Mrs. Thompson about your special notebook yesterday." Ethan lowered his coffee mug. "Oh, what did you tell her?" "I showed her the picture I drew of your helper robot thing." Lily's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. "The one you designed to help old people pick stuff up from the floor. She said it was really neat." Ethan's chest tightened. He remembered sketching that design late one night, inspired by an elderly resident at their apartment complex who struggled to bend down. "Sweetheart, those are just doodles." "No, they're not." Lily put down her spoon with a clatter. "Mrs. Thompson said they were inventions." She carefully pronounced each syllable. "She asked if you went to engineering school." Heat crept up Ethan's neck. "What did you tell her?" "I said you're smart enough without school." Lily grinned, revealing a gap where she'd recently lost a tooth. "And that Mr. Hartman thinks so too, 'cause he gave you a special job offer." Ethan stared at his daughter, seeing himself suddenly through her eyes. Not as the tired janitor who mopped floors all night, but as someone capable of creating things that could help people. Someone worthy of respect. "Mrs. Thompson wants you to come talk to our class about inventions," Lily continued, practically bouncing in her seat. "Can you, Daddy? Please?" "I don't know, sweetie." Ethan's mind drifted to Daniel's offer, still unanswered after 2 days. "Pretty please?" Lily clasped her hands together. "Jimmy's dad came in to talk about being a firefighter, and Sarah's mom showed us how to make pottery. You could show everyone your drawings." Looking at his daughter's hopeful face, Ethan felt something shift inside him. For years, he'd kept his sketches hidden, convinced they were just pointless dreams. But Lily saw something more. She believed in him completely, without reservation. "Tell you what," he said, reaching across to wipe a milk mustache from her upper lip. "Let me think about it, okay?" Lily nodded, but her expression turned serious. "Daddy, why haven't you told Mr. Hartman yes yet? Don't you want to make your inventions real?" The question hit him like a punch to the gut. How could he explain his fears to an 8-year-old? The weight of possibly failing, of being humiliated, of disappointing her. "It's complicated, sweetheart," he began. "Is it because of those mean people who laughed?" Lily asked quietly. "Mom always said mean people are just scared of special things they don't understand." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Claire had always known exactly what to say, how to cut through doubt with simple wisdom. Now here was their daughter, channeling that same insight. "Your mom was very smart," he managed, his voice rough. "She also said you were the bravest person she knew." Lily stood up and wrapped her arms around his neck. "Even braver than Superman." Ethan hugged her back, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. Claire would want him to take this chance, he realized. She'd probably be scolding him right now for hesitating. "You'd better get ready for school," he said finally, giving Lily one last squeeze. "I need to make a phone call." After dropping Lily off at the daycare center, Ethan found himself standing outside Daniel Hartman's office. His hand trembled slightly as he knocked on the heavy wooden door. "Come in," Daniel's deep voice called. The CEO sat behind his massive desk, reading glasses perched on his nose as he reviewed some papers. He looked up and smiled warmly. "Ethan, I was hoping you'd stop by." "Mr. Hartman won." Ethan started. "Daniel, please." He gestured to a chair. "Have a seat." Ethan sat down, his work uniform feeling rough and out of place against the leather upholstery. "I've been thinking about your offer. And my daughter believes in me," Ethan said simply. "She sees me as someone who can make a difference. Maybe it's time I started seeing that too." Daniel removed his glasses, his expression thoughtful. "Sometimes our children see us more clearly than we see ourselves." "I want to accept the position," Ethan continued, his voice growing stronger. "I know it won't be easy. I know some people here don't think I deserve this chance. But I'm willing to work harder than anyone to prove them wrong." Daniel stood up. "Let's make this official." He led Ethan to a nearby conference room, its walls lined with windows overlooking the city. As they stood across from each other, Daniel held out his hand. "Welcome to the team, Ethan." Ethan grasped it firmly, even as his stomach churned with anxiety. The morning sun caught the dust motes floating in the air, making them shine like tiny stars. He thought of Lily's proud face, of Claire's memory, of all the nights he'd spent sketching his ideas while others slept. "Thank you for this opportunity," he said, meaning every word, even as doubt whispered at the edges of his mind. Ethan tugged at the collar of his borrowed suit, the fabric slightly too tight around his neck. The suit belonged to his neighbor, Mr. Patterson, who'd insisted Ethan borrow it for his first day in his new position. The pants were a bit short, and the jacket pinched at the shoulders, but it was better than showing up in his usual work clothes. His footsteps echoed through the marble lobby of Hartman Industries, the same floors he'd mopped just days before. Now, clutching a worn leather briefcase containing his sketches, he made his way to the elevator. His hand trembled slightly as he pressed the button for the executive floor. The elevator doors opened to reveal a world of glass, chrome, and hushed conversations. Heads turned as he stepped out, and the whispers began immediately. A group of executives huddled near the water cooler barely tried to hide their stares, their faces a mix of curiosity and disdain. "Ah, Ethan! Right on time!" Daniel Hartman's booming voice cut through the tension. He strode forward, dressed impeccably in a tailored navy suit, and clapped Ethan on the shoulder. "Let me show you to your desk." They walked past rows of cubicles, each step accompanied by more whispers and sideways glances. Ethan kept his eyes forward, though his cheeks burned. He could hear snippets of conversation. Janitor, favoritism, ridiculous. Daniel led him to a corner workspace with a large desk and a computer. "This is yours now," he said, gesturing to the setup. "I know it's different from what you're used to, but you'll adapt quickly." Ethan set his briefcase down carefully. "Thank you, Mr. Hartman. Daniel," the CEO corrected with a warm smile. "We're colleagues now." A sharp laugh from nearby made them both turn. Two men in expensive suits quickly looked away, pretending to be engrossed in conversation. Daniel's expression hardened. "Pay no attention to them, Ethan. They're just afraid of change." He lowered his voice. "And between us, they're afraid of what happens when someone proves talent doesn't come with a fancy degree or the right connections." Ethan nodded, though his stomach churned. He'd faced mockery before, but this felt different, more personal, more threatening to his future. "Your first task," Daniel continued, pulling out a folder, "is to review these product specifications. I want your fresh perspective on them. Don't be afraid to mark them up with your ideas." As Daniel walked away, Ethan sank into his chair, acutely aware of the eyes on him. The computer screen glowed to life, and he stared at it, momentarily overwhelmed by the corporate email system and unfamiliar software icons. Throughout the morning, people walked past his desk, some openly staring, others pretending he didn't exist. A few smiled tentatively, including Sarah from HR, who stopped to welcome him and offer help if he needed it. By lunchtime, Ethan's collar felt like it was choking him. He loosened his tie and pulled out the sandwich he'd packed, not quite ready to brave the corporate cafeteria. As he ate at his desk, he overheard two women discussing him. "Did you hear? Hartman's pet project can't even use Excel properly." "Well, what do you expect? He was pushing a mop last week." Ethan's sandwich turned to ash in his mouth, but he forced himself to keep eating. He thought of Lily, of her proud face when he'd told her about his new job. He couldn't let her down. The afternoon brought more challenges. A team meeting where nobody would meet his eye. A printer that seemed determined to humiliate him. Files he couldn't find. But, slowly, steadily, he began to understand the rhythm of office life. As the workday wound down, most employees filed out, leaving the office quiet and dim. Ethan remained at his desk, spreading out his sketches. With the pressure of watching eyes gone, he felt more at ease. He pulled out his most precious sketch, a design for a portable medical device he'd conceived during his wife Marie's final months. The hospitals had been full of expensive, complicated machines. He'd always thought there had to be a simpler way, a more affordable option for families like his. The sound of small feet pattering across carpet made him look up. Lily came bounding toward him, her backpack bouncing, fresh from the company daycare. "Daddy, is this your new desk? It's so big." Ethan's face broke into a genuine smile for the first time that day. "It sure is, sweetheart. Want to help me work on some drawings?" Lily nodded enthusiastically, pulling out her colored pencils from her backpack. She settled into a spare chair beside him, humming softly as she began to color. The office grew darker outside the windows as Ethan refined his sketches, occasionally explaining details to Lily, who listened with rapt attention while adding splashes of color to her own artwork. The medical device design took shape under his careful hands. Simpler, more streamlined, more accessible to people who couldn't afford the expensive alternatives. "Mommy would have liked this one," Lily said softly, pointing to his sketch. "It's pretty, even though it's a hospital thing." Ethan's hand paused over the paper, his heart squeezing at her words. "You think so?" "Uh-huh. She always said pretty things make people feel better." Ethan looked at his daughter's wise little face, then back at his design. Despite the difficult day, despite the whispers and stares, he knew he was exactly where he needed to be. With Lily beside him and his ideas flowing onto paper, the borrowed suit and judgmental coworkers didn't matter quite so much anymore. The elevator doors opened to reveal a maze of cubicles and glass-walled offices. Ethan's heart pounded as he stepped onto the plush carpet of the executive floor. A few employees glanced up from their computers, their stares a mix of curiosity and disdain. He heard whispers follow him as he walked past. "Mr. Cole?" A warm voice cut through his anxiety. A woman with kind eyes and silver-streaked dark hair approached him. She wore a navy blazer and carried a folder against her chest. "I'm Grace Miller from HR. Daniel asked me to help get you settled in." "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Miller." Ethan shifted his briefcase to shake her hand. "Please, call me Grace." She smiled, gesturing for him to follow her. "Let's get you set up at your desk, and then we can handle the paperwork over coffee." Grace led him to a corner workspace with a window view of the city. The desk was pristine, with a new computer and empty shelves waiting to be filled. It felt surreal. Just days ago he'd been emptying the trash bins in this very room. "This is really mine?" Ethan asked, running his fingers along the smooth desktop. "All yours." Grace pulled up a chair. "I know it's a big change, but Daniel has excellent instincts about people. He wouldn't have offered you this opportunity if he didn't believe in you completely." Ethan placed his briefcase down, noticing how out of place it looked on the expensive desk. "I just hope I don't let him down. Why don't we take care of the HR forms over coffee? The break room's quiet this time of morning." Grace's suggestion felt more like a lifeline than small talk. In the break room, Grace poured them both coffee in real mugs, not the paper cups Ethan was used to. They sat at a small table by the window, morning sunlight streaming in. "I noticed your emergency contact form," Grace said softly, sliding a paper across the table. "You listed your daughter as your only family member." Ethan nodded, stirring his coffee. "My wife, Sarah. She passed away 3 years ago. Cancer." Grace's eyes softened with understanding. "I lost my husband, Tom, 5 years ago. He was a Marine, killed in action overseas." Ethan looked up, seeing the same familiar pain reflected in her eyes. "I'm sorry." "Time helps," Grace said, "but some days it still feels like yesterday. The hardest part was learning to believe in myself again. Tom always had more faith in me than I did." "Sarah was like that too," Ethan admitted, his voice rough with emotion. "She'd love seeing me here now. She always said my inventions could help people someday." "Tell me about your designs," Grace encouraged, pushing the paperwork aside. Ethan hesitated, then opened his briefcase. He pulled out his most recent sketches, the medical device inspired by Sarah's final months. His hands steadied as he explained the concept, how it could make home care easier and more affordable for families facing similar struggles. "My husband would have appreciated this," Grace said, studying the drawings. "He was always looking for ways to help others too. That's why he served." She looked at Ethan with newfound respect. "You know, we both had partners who saw the best in us. Maybe it's time we started seeing it in ourselves." Ethan felt something loosen in his chest, a knot of tension he'd carried for years. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm crazy for even trying this. I'm just a janitor." "You're not just anything," Grace corrected firmly. "You're a father, an inventor, and now you're part of this team, and you're not alone anymore." They spent the next hour completing paperwork, but the conversation flowed naturally. Grace shared stories about her husband's courage, and Ethan told her about Sarah's unwavering optimism. Their shared loss created a bridge of understanding. As they finished the last forms, Grace's expression grew serious. "Ethan, I should warn you. Be careful around here. Some people aren't happy about your promotion." "I've noticed the looks," Ethan admitted. "It's more than looks. I've heard things." Grace lowered her voice. "Particularly from Thompson and Martinez in development. They're not just resentful, they're actively working to undermine you." Ethan's stomach tightened. "What should I do?" "Document everything. Keep copies of all your work, and don't trust anyone who suddenly acts overly friendly." Grace gathered the papers, her movements deliberate. "I've been here long enough to recognize when executives are plotting something. These two are especially aggressive." Ethan nodded, his earlier confidence wavering. But when he looked at Grace, he saw the same strength that had helped her survive her own loss. If she could rebuild her life after such tragedy, he could face whatever challenges lay ahead. "Thank you," he said simply. "For everything." Grace stood, straightening her blazer. "We widowed folks have to stick together." She smiled warmly. "Now, let's get you back to that nice desk of yours. You have inventions to create." The morning sun hadn't yet risen when Ethan's alarm buzzed at 5:30 a.m. He dragged himself out of bed, his muscles aching from hunching over designs late into the night. The wooden floor creaked beneath his feet as he made his way to Lily's room. "Sweet pea," he whispered, gently shaking her shoulder. Time to get up. Lily's eyes fluttered open, and she gave him a sleepy smile. 5 more minutes, Daddy? Not today, honey. We've got to get moving. He pulled her pink blanket back and helped her sit up. While Lily got dressed, Ethan hurried to the kitchen. He started the coffee maker and pulled out ingredients for breakfast. The smell of toast and scrambled eggs soon filled their small apartment. He packed Lily's lunchbox with a sandwich, apple slices, and a little note with a heart drawn on it, just like her mother used to do. Daddy, my hair's all tangled, Lily called from the bathroom. Ethan glanced at the clock. 6:15 a.m. They were running behind. He rushed to help her, his fingers working carefully through the knots in her brown hair. How about a ponytail today? Can you do braids like Mommy used to? His heart squeezed. I'm still learning those, Sweet Pea. Maybe tomorrow? They rushed through breakfast, Ethan checking his phone for messages from Daniel while simultaneously making sure Lily ate her eggs. The morning commute was a blur of traffic, and NPR news playing softly on the radio while Lily dozed in the back seat. At the company daycare, Miss Thompson greeted them with a warm smile. Good morning, Lily. We're doing art projects today. Can I draw more inventions like Daddy's? Lily asked excitedly. Of course you can, sweetheart. Ethan kissed Lily goodbye, his tie already feeling too tight around his neck. The borrowed suit jacket pulled awkwardly across his shoulders as he hurried to the elevator. The morning meeting seemed to stretch endlessly, filled with terminology he was still learning, and sideways glances from colleagues who clearly thought he didn't belong. During lunch, while others went out to nearby restaurants, Ethan stayed at his desk, sketching improvements to his medical device design. His sandwich sat half-eaten beside him as he lost himself in the work. The afternoon brought more meetings, more designs, more revisions. His eyes burned from staring at the computer screen, trying to translate his hand-drawn sketches into the company's CAD software. Before he knew it, it was 5:30 p.m., time to pick up Lily. Another late night, Mr. Cole? Miss Thompson asked as he collected Lily and her backpack. Just for a little while, he assured her. We've got a presentation tomorrow. Back in his office, Ethan set Lily up at a small table near his desk with her homework and coloring books. He ordered pizza for dinner, something he tried not to do too often, but today's schedule left no time for cooking. Daddy, look! Lily held up a crayon drawing of what looked like a robot. It's your invention, but with wings. Ethan smiled, despite his exhaustion. That's creative thinking, Sweet Pea. Maybe we should add that to the design. Hours ticked by. Ethan's eyes grew heavy as he refined the prototype specifications. The office had grown quiet, most employees long gone. Only the occasional cleaning crew member passed by, nodding in recognition to their former colleague. When he looked up from his computer again, he found Lily had fallen asleep at her little table, her head resting on her folded arms, colored pencils scattered around her. Guilt gnawed at him. He should have taken her home hours ago. The sound of footsteps made him turn. Daniel Hartman stood in the doorway, his tie loosened, jacket draped over his arm. The CEO's eyes moved from Ethan to Lily's sleeping form. Without a word, he walked over and gently laid his expensive suit jacket over Lily's shoulders. This company needs men like you, Daniel said quietly, turning to Ethan. His voice carried both approval and understanding. Men who understand what it means to sacrifice for something bigger than themselves. Ethan looked at his daughter, peaceful in her sleep, wrapped in a jacket that probably cost more than their monthly rent. His throat tightened with emotion, pride mixed with exhaustion, determination tangled with doubt. But seeing Lily there, faith written across her innocent face, even in sleep, he knew he would keep pushing forward no matter how tired he became. Ethan's desk was barely visible under the scattered papers and prototype parts. 3 weeks of endless revisions had transformed his workspace into what Lily called his invention nest. The morning light streamed through the office windows, catching dust particles that danced in the air as he made final adjustments to his medical device. His fingers, calloused from nights of tinkering, carefully tightened the last screw. The prototype sat before him, sleek, simple, and nothing like the bulky machines his wife Sarah had endured during her illness. Just thinking about her made his heart ache, but this time the pain came with purpose. "Mr. Cole?" A young engineer named Tom knocked on his cubicle wall. "We're ready for the first round of testing." Ethan nodded, gathering the prototype with trembling hands. The walk to the testing lab felt like miles, each step weighted with doubt and hope. Other engineers looked up from their computers as he passed, some offering encouraging smiles, others wearing masks of skepticism. The testing lab was immaculate, stark white walls lined with sophisticated equipment. Grace, from HR, stood in the corner, clipboard in hand, there to document the proceedings. Her presence helped steady his nerves. "Okay, let's see what we've got," Tom said, taking the prototype. He placed it on the testing bench while another engineer, Maria, began connecting sensors to various points on the device. Ethan watched, barely breathing, as they initiated the first test. Numbers flickered across computer screens. Graphs rose and fell. The prototype hummed quietly, exactly as he'd designed it to. "These readings," Maria's eyes widened. "They're incredible." She turned to Tom. "Run it again." 4 more tests followed. Each time, the results were the same. The device was performing beyond even Ethan's optimistic projections. "Mr. Cole," Tom said, looking up from his tablet, "this isn't just good. It's revolutionary. The energy efficiency alone island." He shook his head in amazement. "And the cost to manufacture would be a fraction of current models." Grace stepped forward, beaming. "I'll notify Mr. Hartman immediately." Within minutes, Daniel strode into the lab, his commanding presence filling the room. He studied the test results in silence while Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs. "Explain it to me," Daniel said finally. "In simple terms." Ethan cleared his throat. "It's like, imagine a car engine that runs on half the fuel, but delivers twice the power. The current machines in hospitals, they're expensive, complicated, and hard to maintain. This design strips away everything unnecessary. It's intuitive, reliable, and most importantly," he paused, thinking of Sarah, "it puts the patient first." Daniel set down the results and walked over to the prototype. He ran his hand along its smooth surface, studying every detail. The room held its breath. "When I first saw your sketches," Daniel said slowly, "I knew you had potential. But this..." He turned to face Ethan, his expression serious. "This exceeds everything I hoped for." Relief flooded through Ethan's body. He hadn't realized how tense he'd been until that moment. "The annual board gala is in 2 weeks," Daniel continued. "That's where we'll unveil this. Full presentation. All the major players in attendance." He clapped Ethan on the shoulder. "It's time to show the world what you can do." The words hit Ethan like a physical force. The board gala was legendary, the company's biggest event of the year. Every important person in the industry would be there. "Sir, I don't know if I'm ready for something that big," Ethan stammered. "You weren't ready to leave your janitorial position either," Daniel reminded him with a knowing smile. "But look what happened when you took that leap." Grace stepped forward. "I can help you prepare for the presentation, Ethan. We've got 2 weeks to get you ready." Ethan looked at his prototype, the culmination of countless late nights, of pushing through self-doubt, of holding on to his dreams while mopping floors. He thought of Lily's unwavering belief in him, of Sarah's memory driving him forward. "Okay," he said quietly, then with more conviction, "Okay, yes, let's do it." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Engineers ran more tests, documenting every aspect of the prototype's performance. Grace started organizing presentation materials, while Daniel made calls to arrange the gala unveiling. That evening, as the office began to empty, Ethan sat at his desk, staring at the invitation Daniel had left for him. The elegant cardstock felt foreign in his hands. Annual Hartman Industries Board Gala, written in gold lettering. His name was listed as a featured presenter. His phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Rodriguez, his elderly neighbor who watched Lily on late workdays. "She's fed and doing homework. Take your time." Ethan leaned back in his chair, emotions churning inside him. Terror at the thought of presenting to hundreds of industry leaders, excitement about sharing his creation with the world, pride in what he'd accomplished, fear of failing spectacularly. The sound of footsteps made him look up. Daniel stood there, coat over his arm, ready to leave for the day. "Still here?" Daniel asked. "Just processing everything," Ethan admitted. Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "You know what the difference is between success and failure?" "What's that?" "Believing you deserve the opportunity when it comes." Daniel's words carried the weight of experience. "You've earned this moment, Ethan. Now you just have to trust yourself enough to seize it." Ethan fingered the edge of the invitation, remembering all the nights he'd spent cleaning this very office, watching successful people come and go, never imagining he'd be one of them. 2 weeks, he said softly, both terrified and thrilled at what lay ahead. 2 weeks, Daniel confirmed with a smile. "Get some rest. Tomorrow, we start preparing you for the biggest night of your career." The grand ballroom of the Hartman Industries headquarters sparkled with crystal chandeliers and polished marble floors. Ethan tugged at his new tie, a gift from Grace, who insisted he needed to look his best tonight. His reflection in the mirrored walls showed a man he barely recognized, dressed in a crisp charcoal suit that Daniel had personally arranged for him. "You got this, Daddy," Lily whispered, squeezing his hand. She wore her favorite blue dress, her hair neatly braided by Grace, who had become like an aunt to her over the past weeks. The room buzzed with conversation as board members, investors, and executives filled the rows of chairs. Ethan spotted the 2 executives who had threatened him, their faces tight with barely concealed anger. But he also saw friendly faces, Grace giving him a thumbs up from the back, and Daniel standing confidently near the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen," Daniel's voice boomed through the speakers. "Tonight, we witness something extraordinary, not just a new product, but a testament to the human spirit." He gestured toward Ethan. "Please welcome Ethan Cole." Ethan's legs felt like lead as he walked to the stage. The spotlight seemed impossibly bright, and for a moment, he froze. Then, he caught sight of Lily's beaming face in the front row, and strength flooded through him. "Good evening," he began, his voice steadier than he expected. 3 years ago, I lost my wife Sarah to a treatable condition. The medicine existed, but the delivery system was too expensive for many hospitals to stock." He paused, letting the weight of those words settle. "That's when I started sketching ideas, late at night after my shift cleaning these very floors." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some faces showed surprise, others curiosity. Ethan pressed on, gaining confidence with each word. "This device," he said, lifting the sleek prototype from its display case, "can deliver precise medication doses at 1/10 the current cost. It's simple to manufacture, easy to maintain, and most importantly, accessible to hospitals everywhere." He demonstrated the mechanism, his hands steady now as he explained each component. The audience leaned forward, captivated by the elegant simplicity of his design. Even the skeptical board members nodded appreciatively. "But this isn't just about technology," Ethan continued, his voice growing passionate. "It's about people. It's about parents who shouldn't have to choose between medication and mortgage payments. It's about nurses who deserve reliable tools without breaking hospital budgets. It's about giving everyone a fighting chance." The room had grown completely silent. Ethan could feel the energy shifting, the initial skepticism melting into genuine interest. "I stand here today not just as an inventor, but as a father who knows what it means to feel helpless when someone you love needs care." His eyes met Lily's, and he saw tears glistening in her eyes. "This invention won't bring back those we've lost, but it can help save others going forward." He walked through the technical specifications, watching as investors scribbled notes furiously. The medical professionals in attendance nodded enthusiastically at the potential applications. Even the hostile executives couldn't find fault with the presentation. "In conclusion," Ethan said, his voice strong and clear, "this isn't just my project. It's a promise to every family facing medical hardship, every healthcare worker struggling with limited resources, and every patient deserving of care. With your support, we can make that promise a reality." For a moment, silence filled the ballroom. Then, like a wave, applause began to build. It started slowly, scattered claps growing into thunderous approval. People rose to their feet, their faces bright with genuine enthusiasm. Daniel stepped forward, clapping Ethan on the back with pride. But Ethan barely noticed his eyes were fixed on Lily, who was running toward him, her blue dress flowing behind her. She launched herself into his arms, and he lifted her up, holding her tight. "Daddy," she whispered in his ear, her voice thick with emotion. "Mommy would be proud of you." Ethan's heart swelled, tears pricking at his eyes as he held his daughter. The applause continued around them, but in that moment, nothing else mattered. He had done it, not just created something meaningful, but shown his daughter that dreams were worth fighting for. Looking out over the crowd of standing, applauding people, Ethan felt a completeness he hadn't experienced since Sarah's passing. He had transformed from the invisible night janitor into someone who could make a real difference in the world. The warmth of Lily's embrace and the thunderous approval of the room wrapped around him like a blanket of victory. For this shining moment, everything seemed perfect. The morning sun streamed through Ethan's kitchen window as he poured Lily's cereal. It was just another Tuesday, or so he thought. His daughter hummed happily, still riding high from the previous night's success at the gala. "Can I bring your picture from the newspaper to show and tell today, Daddy?" Lily asked, reaching for the morning paper on the counter. Ethan smiled, but the expression froze on his face as he caught sight of the headline. "Hartman Industries Scandal. Janitor turned inventor accused of design theft." His hands trembled as he picked up the paper. The article quoted anonymous sources within the company, claiming he had stolen the medical device design from old patent applications. Words jumped out at him: fraud, deception, investigation pending. The spoon clattered from Lily's hand. "Daddy, what's wrong?" Ethan forced a smile, quickly folding the paper. "Nothing, sweetheart. Just some grown-up work stuff." He glanced at the clock. "We better hurry, or you'll be late for school." His phone buzzed constantly during the drive to Lily's school. Texts from Grace, voicemails from Daniel, and emails from HR piled up. After dropping Lily off with a tight hug, he finally listened to Daniel's message. "Ethan, get to the office immediately. Don't talk to anyone. Come straight to my office." The familiar lobby felt different now. Employees who had congratulated him just yesterday now avoided his gaze. Some whispered behind their hands as he passed. The elevator ride to the executive floor was painfully long, each ding of passing floors matching his pounding heartbeat. Grace intercepted him before he reached Daniel's office. Her face was drawn with worry. "It's bad, Ethan. Someone leaked documents to every major newspaper. They're saying you copied the design from rejected patents filed 5 years ago." "That's impossible," Ethan said, his voice hoarse. "I developed everything myself. You know that. You've seen me working on it for months." "I know." Grace squeezed his arm. "Daniel knows too. But the board." The door to the conference room burst open. 2 senior executives emerged, their faces tight with barely concealed satisfaction. One of them, Jenkins, who had always looked at Ethan with contempt, smirked as he passed. Daniel's assistant waved Ethan into the CEO's office. Daniel stood at his window, shoulders tense, phone pressed to his ear. "I don't care what the shareholders are saying. I know this man's character." He turned as Ethan entered, ending the call. "Sit down, Ethan." Daniel's voice was grave. "We're in the middle of a PR nightmare." Ethan sank into a chair, his legs weak. "Mr. Hartman, I swear I didn't steal anything. Every sketch, every calculation, it all came from my own work, from watching my wife suffer through her treatments, seeing what could be improved." "I believe you," Daniel said firmly. "But someone's done a damn good job making it look otherwise." He spread several documents across his desk. "These patent applications they're citing, they're similar enough to raise questions. Different execution, but similar basic concept." "I've never seen those before in my life," Ethan said, scanning the papers with growing horror. A knock interrupted them. Daniel's assistant looked apologetic. "Sir, the board is assembling for an emergency meeting. They're insisting on Mr. Cole's presence." The boardroom was packed with stern faces. Ethan recognized most of them from the gala, where they'd shaken his hand and praised his innovation. Now they regarded him with suspicious, accusatory stares. The board chairman, a severe woman named Victoria Pierce, spoke first. "Mr. Cole, these allegations are extremely serious. The company's reputation is at stake." "The timing is suspicious," another board member added. "Just when we're about to file patents and begin production." Ethan tried to defend himself, but each explanation was met with skeptical looks and more accusations. They had enlarged copies of his sketches side by side with the old patent applications, pointing out similarities that seemed damning out of context. Daniel stood up halfway through. "This is ridiculous. I've watched this man work for months. His character is beyond reproach." "With all due respect, Daniel," Victoria said coldly, "your judgment in this matter seems clouded by personal feelings. Perhaps your desire to find another rags-to-riches story like your own has led you to be too trusting." The words hit like physical blows. Ethan looked around the room, seeing nothing but doubt and condemnation in the faces surrounding him. Even Daniel's fierce defense felt distant, drowned out by the weight of accusations. "Until this matter is resolved," Victoria continued, "we recommend suspending all work on the project and launching a full investigation. Mr. Cole's access to company resources should be restricted immediately." Ethan stood up slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. The sound echoed in the sudden silence. Without a word, he walked to the door. He could hear Daniel arguing with the board behind him, but it didn't matter anymore. His dream was crumbling, and with it, all the hopes he'd built for his and Lily's future. In his small office, he stared at his drawings pinned to the wall, months of work, late nights, and dedication. Each sketch represented a piece of his heart, inspired by memories of his wife's struggle. How could they think he'd stolen this? How could they not see the truth in every line? Grace appeared in his doorway, tears in her eyes. "Ethan, I need to pick up Lily from school," he said quietly, gathering his things. He couldn't bear to look at the designs anymore, couldn't bear to see his dream turn into a nightmare. As he walked through the office one last time, he heard the whispers, saw the stares. The same people who had applauded him yesterday now looked at him like a criminal. The cleaning staff, his former colleagues, averted their eyes as he passed. Outside, the morning headlines were still visible in newspaper stands. "Hartman Industries Scandal," screaming at him in bold letters. Ethan got into his car, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. For the first time since his wife died, he felt truly, completely alone. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silent room as Ethan sat motionless at the table, the damning newspaper spread before him. Sunlight, filtering through the window, seemed to mock the darkness settling over his heart. The headline glared up at him, each word a fresh wound. "Hartman Industries Scandal, Janitor Turned, Inventor Accused of Design. Theft." His coffee grew cold, untouched. The breakfast dishes from Lily's meal sat in the sink, a reminder of how quickly their normal morning had unraveled. He'd managed to get her dressed and off to school, maintaining a brave face until the door closed behind her. Now, alone in their small kitchen, the weight of it all crashed down on his shoulders. Ethan's fingers traced the words of the article for the 100th time. Anonymous sources, stolen designs, patent violations. Each accusation felt like a physical blow, stealing the air from his lungs. The medical device he'd poured his heart into, inspired by watching his wife's suffering, now twisted into something ugly and corrupt. The front door creaked open, pulling him from his dark thoughts. Lily's backpack hit the floor with a thud as she rushed in, followed by Grace from HR, who had picked her up early from school at Ethan's request. He couldn't bear the thought of Lily facing potential whispers and stares at the daycare center. "Daddy!" Lily's voice carried its usual cheer, but her eyes held worry as she studied his face. At 8 years old, she was too perceptive for her own good, just like her mother had been. "Hey, sweetheart," Ethan managed, forcing a weak smile. "Thank you, Grace." Grace squeezed his shoulder. "Hang in there, Ethan. Daniel's fighting for you in the boardroom right now." With a sympathetic nod, she left father and daughter alone. Lily climbed onto the chair next to him, her small hand covering his larger one. "I made something for you in art class today." She pulled a folded paper from her pocket, carefully smoothing it out on the table. The crayon drawing showed a tall figure in a cape, standing proud atop what appeared to be the Hartman Industries building. A smaller figure stood next to him, holding his hand. Above them, written in wobbly letters, "Daddy the Hero." "See?" Lily pointed to the drawing. "That's you, and that's me. And look, I drew your invention helping people, just like you said it would." Sure enough, stick figures with smiling faces filled the bottom of the page, each holding what looked like his medical device. Ethan's vision blurred with tears. "It's beautiful, honey. Why are you sad, Daddy?" Lily's voice trembled slightly. "Did those mean people in the newspaper make you sad?" He pulled her onto his lap, holding her close. The familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo brought a fresh wave of pain. How could he have let himself dream so big? He should have known better. Should have stayed in his place, keeping the floors clean and his head down. "Sometimes," he started, struggling to find the right words. "Grown-ups can be very unfair. They're saying I took someone else's idea, but I didn't, Lily. I promise I didn't." "I know you didn't," Lily said firmly. "You worked so hard. I saw you drawing every night, and you said it was to help sick people, like." She hesitated, then whispered, "Like Mommy." Ethan's heart clenched. He looked at the newspaper again, then at his daughter's drawing. The contrast couldn't have been starker, the world's cruel judgment versus his daughter's pure faith in him. "Maybe," he said softly, more to himself than to Lily, "maybe I should just quit. Go back to what I was doing before. It was simpler then." Lily's small hand gripped his tightly. Her blue eyes, so like her mother's, fixed on him with surprising intensity. "Daddy, you told me we never give up. Remember? When I couldn't ride my bike, and I fell down, and I wanted to quit? You said, 'Coles, don't give up.'" The simple truth in her words hit him like a physical force. Memories flooded back, teaching Lily to ride her bike, bandaging scraped knees, wiping tears, and always encouraging her to try again. How many times had he told her that giving up wasn't in their family's nature? "And you didn't give up," he whispered. "Nope." Lily beamed. "And now I can ride all the way to the corner by myself." She hugged him fiercely. "You can't give up, Daddy. You're my hero, just like in my picture." Ethan held his daughter close, feeling her complete faith in him. The newspaper still lay on the table, its accusations stark and cold, but somehow its power had diminished. In its place, a crayon drawing of a hero stood proud, a child's pure vision of truth cutting through the darkness of adult corruption. "Will you help me put your drawing on the fridge?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. Lily bounced off his lap, grabbing her artwork. Together, they secured it with magnets, right at eye level. The caped figure seemed to stand a little straighter, a little taller, under Lily's proud gaze. "There," she declared. "Now you can see it every morning, and remember, Coles don't give up." Ethan looked at his daughter, this small guardian of his courage, and felt something shift inside him. The fear and doubt were still there, but they no longer seemed insurmountable. Not with Lily's hand in his, not with her unwavering belief lighting the way forward. Daniel Hartman sat alone in his dimly lit office, his tie loosened and jacket draped over his chair. The city lights twinkled beyond his window, but his eyes were fixed on the stack of files scattered across his desk. Something about the plagiarism accusations against Ethan didn't add up. He picked up his coffee mug, grimacing at the cold liquid inside. It was his fourth cup tonight, but sleep was the last thing on his mind. His secretary had left hours ago, leaving him to dig through company records in solitude. "Show me what you're hiding," he muttered, pulling another folder from the stack. The first red flag appeared in an email chain between the executives who'd been giving Ethan trouble. Their messages were carefully worded, but Daniel had spent decades reading between the lines of corporate speak. "Concerns about the integrity of the design process," he read aloud, his frown deepening. 2 weeks before any accusations surfaced, he opened his laptop and started cross-referencing dates. The executives had accessed Ethan's project files multiple times during odd hours, long after most employees had gone home. Daniel's jaw clenched as he noticed a pattern emerging. "Got you," he whispered, discovering a deleted security log that showed two of them entering Ethan's office late one night, just days before the gala. The paper trail led him to the company's internal messaging system. Hidden in archived conversations were snippets that painted an ugly picture, coordinated efforts to discredit Ethan, carefully planted doubts about his character, and strategic leaks to the press. Daniel's hands curled into fists as he read a particularly damning exchange. "The janitor needs to learn his place. Leave it to me. I've got contacts at the Tribune who owe me favors." He pushed back from his desk and stood up, pacing the length of his office. The city stretched out below him, peaceful and unaware of the injustice being plotted in these corporate towers. It reminded him of his own humble beginnings, of the people who had tried to keep him down. "Not this time," he said firmly, returning to his desk with renewed determination. For the next 2 hours, Daniel meticulously compiled evidence. He organized emails, security logs, and timestamps into a clear timeline of sabotage. The executives had been thorough in covering their tracks, but they'd underestimated his attention to detail. His phone buzzed, a text from his wife asking if he was coming home soon. Daniel glanced at the clock. 11:30 p.m. He typed a quick reply, promising he'd be home after one more important task. The evidence was irrefutable now. He had proof of unauthorized access to Ethan's files, documented meetings where the false accusations were planned, and even financial records showing payments to a journalist who wrote the initial negative story. Daniel sat back in his chair, exhausted but satisfied. The same qualities that had helped him build this company from nothing: persistence, attention to detail, and an unwavering sense of justice, had served him well tonight. He thought of Ethan's daughter, Lily, and her innocent pride in her father's work. He thought of Ethan himself, a man who had faced loss and hardship with dignity, only to have his moment of triumph stolen by jealousy and spite. "Time to make this right," Daniel said, reaching for his phone. He hesitated for a moment, aware of the late hour, but knowing Ethan deserved to hear this news as soon as possible. The phone rang several times before a tired voice answered. "Hello? Ethan, it's Daniel Hartman." "Mr. Hartman?" Ethan's voice was guarded, uncertain. "I need you to listen carefully," Daniel said, his voice firm but kind. "I've spent the evening going through company records, and I've found something you need to know about." He heard Ethan's sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. "The accusations against you, they were fabricated, completely orchestrated by a group of executives who couldn't stand seeing you succeed. I have proof, Ethan. Solid, undeniable proof." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Ethan finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything yet," Daniel replied. "Just hold on and trust me. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir," Ethan said quietly. "I can do that." "Good man," Daniel said, gathering the evidence files into his briefcase. "Everything's going to be all right. I promise you that." He ended the call and looked out at the city once more. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but tonight he had uncovered the truth. It was a start, a chance to right a wrong, and show that in his company, integrity still mattered more than status or position. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Hartman Industries' executive boardroom, casting long shadows across the polished mahogany table. Daniel Hartman stood at the head of the table, his shoulders squared and jaw set with determination. The weight of the evidence in his briefcase felt like lead. Around the table sat 12 board members, their faces a mix of concern and curiosity. In the corner seats, Victor Ross and James Mitchell, the executives who had orchestrated Ethan's downfall, wore matching expressions of smug confidence. They exchanged knowing glances, clearly believing their plan had worked perfectly. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Daniel began, his voice steady and authoritative. "We're here to address the recent allegations against Ethan Cole and his medical device design." Victor Ross leaned forward, his expensive suit creasing slightly. "Mr. Hartman, I think we've all seen the evidence. It's quite clear that your protégé betrayed your trust." Several board members nodded in agreement, but Daniel raised his hand for silence. He opened his briefcase with deliberate slowness, the click of its latches echoing in the tense room. "Evidence is exactly what we're here to discuss," Daniel said, pulling out a thick folder. "But not the kind you're expecting, Mr. Ross." The room grew still. Daniel walked slowly around the table, placing documents in front of each board member. When he reached Victor and James, he paused slightly longer, meeting their eyes with a steely gaze. "What you're looking at," Daniel continued, "is a complete audit of our internal communications over the past 3 months. Pay particular attention to pages 3 through 7. The sound of rustling paper filled the air as the board members began reading. Daniel watched as their expressions changed from confusion to shock and finally to anger. "These emails," one board member gasped, looking up. "They show a deliberate campaign to discredit Mr. Cole." Daniel nodded grimly. "Indeed they do, Mrs. Henderson. Mr. Ross and Mr. Mitchell orchestrated a systematic effort to plant false evidence and spread malicious rumors. They even paid an industrial designer to create backdated sketches similar to Ethan's work." Victor's face had gone pale, while James started to sweat visibly. "This is taken out of context," Victor stammered, his confidence evaporating. "Is it?" Daniel picked up a remote and clicked it. The large screen at the end of the room came to life, displaying security camera footage. "This is from last Tuesday night. Watch carefully." The footage showed James Mitchell entering the Research and Development Department after hours, placing documents in Ethan's desk drawer. The timestamp was clear and undeniable. "Those documents," Daniel explained, his voice growing harder, "were the supposedly discovered proof of plagiarism that was leaked to the press." The boardroom erupted in angry murmurs. Several members turned to glare at Victor and James, who now sat rigid in their chairs, their faces ashen. "Mr. Hartman," the board's senior member spoke up, her voice trembling with rage. "This is absolutely unconscionable. These men have not only attempted to destroy an innocent man's reputation, but have potentially cost our company millions in development delays and negative publicity." Daniel placed his hands on the table, leaning forward. "There's more. Their sabotage extended beyond just Ethan. They've been undermining multiple projects, hoping to force me out and take control of the company's direction." He produced another set of documents, these showing financial irregularities and manipulated project reports. The board members passed them around, their expressions growing increasingly outraged. Victor suddenly stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You can't prove any of this. It's all circumstantial." "Sit down, Mr. Ross," Daniel commanded, his voice cutting through the room like steel. "The FBI's Corporate Fraud Division has already verified every document. They're waiting downstairs to interview both of you." James Mitchell slumped in his chair, all pretense of innocence gone. Victor remained standing, his face contorted with anger and fear. "You were so focused on destroying a good man," Daniel continued, addressing them directly, "that you forgot the first rule of leadership: character matters. Ethan Cole, the man you mocked and tried to ruin, showed more integrity cleaning our floors than you've shown in your entire careers." The board members nodded in agreement, some even applauding softly. Daniel straightened to his full height, his presence commanding the room. "Victor Ross and James Mitchell," he announced formally. "You are both terminated from Hartman Industries, effective immediately. Security will escort you to collect your belongings, after which you will cooperate with the federal investigation." "You can't do this," Victor shouted, but his protests were drowned out by the unanimous voices of support from the board members. Daniel pressed a button on his desk phone. The boardroom doors opened, and 2 security officers entered, their faces professional but stern. "Please remove Mr. Ross and Mr. Mitchell from the premises," Daniel instructed. As the disgraced executives were led out, their former colleagues watched in stony silence. Once they were gone, Daniel addressed the remaining board members. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have much work to do to repair the damage these men have caused. But first, we need to make things right with Ethan Cole." The senior board member stood up, straightening her jacket. "Mr. Hartman, I believe I speak for the entire board when I say we owe Mr. Cole a tremendous apology. These findings are shocking, and we're fully behind any measures you deem necessary to make this right." The room filled with sounds of agreement and calls for immediate action to clear Ethan's name. Daniel watched as the truth he had uncovered washed away weeks of lies and manipulation. Justice had been served, but he knew this was just the beginning of making things right. Behind him, through the windows, the morning sun continued to rise over the city, marking the start of a new day at Hartman Industries, one where truth and integrity had prevailed over greed and deception. Daniel's voice cut through the chaos that had erupted after the evidence was presented. "Ladies and gentlemen of the board, please." His commanding tone brought immediate silence to the room. The fired executives, their faces now ashen, were being escorted out by security. Once the double doors closed behind them, Daniel straightened his tie and cleared his throat. His eyes found Ethan, who stood uncertainly near the wall, still processing everything that had just happened. The janitor-turned-inventor wore a simple navy suit that Grace from HR had helped him choose, a stark contrast to the bespoke attire surrounding him. "Mr. Cole," Daniel called out, his voice warm but formal. "Would you please join me up here?" Ethan's shoes squeaked slightly on the polished floor as he made his way to the front of the room. He could feel every eye following his movement, could sense the weight of judgment and curiosity pressing in from all sides. His hands trembled slightly, and he tucked them behind his back. "What you've all witnessed today is more than just the exposure of corporate sabotage," Daniel continued, placing a steady hand on Ethan's shoulder. "It's a reminder of why I started this company in the first place. To innovate, to create, to give opportunities to those who deserve them." The board members shifted in their leather chairs, some nodding, others maintaining carefully neutral expressions. Daniel turned to face Ethan directly, his eyes bright with purpose. "Ethan Cole came to us as a janitor, a man who worked nights, keeping our buildings clean, while raising his daughter alone." Daniel's voice grew stronger with each word. But he was more than that. He was an inventor who sketched brilliant designs between his shifts, a father who never gave up on his dreams, even when life dealt him the hardest blows. A few board members began to whisper among themselves, but Daniel raised his hand for silence. "When his daughter innocently shared his talent with me, I saw something familiar. I saw myself 30 years ago, when I was nothing but a kid with big ideas and empty pockets." Ethan swallowed hard, his throat tight with emotion. He thought of Lily, of all the nights he'd spent mopping these floors, of his late wife, and how she'd always believed in him. Daniel's next words snapped him back to the present. "That's why, with the full authority of my position as CEO, I'm not just clearing Ethan's name today." Daniel paused, his gaze sweeping the room. "I'm making him a partner in Hartman Industries." The reaction was immediate. Gasps echoed off the walls. One board member actually dropped his pen, the metal clinking against his water glass. Another stood up, mouth agape, then slowly sat back down. "Mr. Hartman," a senior board member sputtered, "this is unprecedented. So was hiring a man like me 30 years ago," Daniel shot back, his tone brooking no argument. "Sometimes unprecedented is exactly what a company needs to move forward." Ethan's knees felt weak. He gripped the edge of the conference table, trying to steady himself. Partners were typically seasoned executives with decades of experience, not former janitors with homemade inventions. "The medical device Ethan designed," Daniel continued, pulling up slides on the wall screen. "Initial market analysis suggests it could generate over $50 million in revenue its first year. More importantly, it could help thousands of patients who can't afford current options. That's the kind of thinking we need at the top." Tears began to well in Ethan's eyes. He thought of all the nights he'd spent sketching at his kitchen table, Lily coloring beside him. How many times had he almost given up? How many mornings had he questioned whether he was foolish to keep dreaming? Ethan's voice cracked. He took a deep breath, wiping at his eyes with the back of his hand. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Daniel smiled, extending his hand. "Say, you'll help lead this company into a future where innovation comes from anywhere, where good ideas matter more than fancy titles." Tears were now streaming freely down Ethan's face. He looked at the offered hand, the same hand that had once helped him up when he'd slipped while mopping the lobby floor, the same hand that had given him a chance when everyone else had laughed. "Yes," Ethan managed, grasping Daniel's hand firmly despite his trembling fingers. "Yes, I accept." The boardroom erupted in applause, hesitant at first, then growing stronger. Even the most skeptical members seemed moved by the raw emotion of the moment. Through his tears, Ethan could see several board members dabbing at their own eyes. "Welcome to the family, partner," Daniel said, pulling him into a brief, firm embrace. As they separated, he added quietly, "Lily's going to be so proud." Ethan nodded, unable to speak through the lump in his throat. All he could think about was rushing to the company daycare to tell his daughter that dreams really do come true. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Ethan's new corner office, casting long shadows across the polished hardwood floors. A week had passed since Daniel's shocking announcement in the boardroom, but it still felt surreal. Ethan ran his hand along the smooth surface of his mahogany desk, afraid that if he blinked, it might all disappear. His old cleaning cart and worn mop were replaced by a sleek laptop and stacks of engineering reports. The walls, once bare, now displayed his original sketches in simple black frames, Daniel's idea, to remind everyone where innovation truly comes from. A gentle knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. Grace stood in the doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee. Her warm smile hadn't changed since the days she'd greet him during his night shifts. "Thought you might need this," she said, walking in and placing 1 cup on his desk. "How's the view from up here?" Ethan chuckled softly, gesturing to the city sprawled out below. "Different from the janitor's closet, that's for sure." His voice carried a hint of lingering disbelief. "You earned this, Ethan," Grace said firmly, settling into one of the leather chairs facing his desk. "Every bit of it." Before he could respond, Sarah from accounting passed by, waving through the glass walls. "Morning, Mr. Cole. Those prototype specs you sent over were brilliant." Her genuine enthusiasm was a far cry from the awkward avoidance of just weeks ago. "Still getting used to that," Ethan admitted to Grace, returning Sarah's wave. "The way people look at me now, it's different." Grace leaned forward, her expression serious. "They're seeing what was always there, Ethan, what your daughter saw all along." The mention of Lily brought a smile to his face. He glanced at her photo on his desk, her gap-toothed grin beaming back at him. "She's over the moon about all this. Keeps telling everyone at school her daddy's an inventor. Smart girl." Grace nodded. "She knew before any of us." A group of engineers walked past, each nodding respectfully at Ethan through the glass. One stopped to tap on the window, pointing excitedly at some papers in his hand. Ethan gestured for him to come in. "Mr. Cole," the young engineer said, practically bouncing with enthusiasm. "We ran those simulations you suggested for the medical device. The cost reduction is even better than we projected." Ethan accepted the reports, scanning the numbers with growing satisfaction. His years of practical experience, of finding creative solutions with limited resources, were proving invaluable in ways he'd never imagined. "Good work, Jason," he said, remembering how it felt to have someone believe in your ideas. "Let's review these in detail at the team meeting this afternoon." After Jason left, Grace raised an eyebrow. "Look at you, managing projects, leading meetings. You're a natural." Ethan shook his head modestly. "I'm just trying to help people. That's all I ever wanted to do." He paused, thinking of the nights he'd spent sketching designs while watching over his sick wife. These innovations, they could make a real difference for families who can't afford expensive medical care. "That's exactly why Daniel chose you," Grace replied. "You see beyond profit margins. You see people." The morning continued with a steady stream of visitors. Department heads seeking approval, team members sharing updates, even the cafeteria manager asking his opinion on new menu items. Each interaction reinforced the reality of his new position, though part of him still felt like the quiet janitor who used to fade into the background. Around noon, Daniel stopped by, not bothering to knock. "How's our newest partner settling in?" he asked, his commanding presence filling the room. "Getting there, sir," Ethan replied, standing automatically. Daniel waved him back down. "None of that sir business anymore, Ethan. We're partners now." He glanced around the office approvingly. "Have you looked at the education benefit package yet? For Lily?" Ethan nodded, emotion catching in his throat. The company would cover his daughter's education through college, a dream he'd never thought possible before. "Good," Daniel said. "Because I expect great things from the next generation of Coles, too." After Daniel left, Ethan spent the afternoon in productive meetings, reviewing designs and answering emails. The work energized him in a way he'd never experienced before. Here, his ideas weren't just dreams, they were becoming reality. At 3 o'clock, familiar footsteps came racing down the hallway. Lily burst through the door, her backpack bouncing, her eyes wide with excitement. "Daddy!" Ethan caught her as she launched herself into his arms, spinning her around as she squealed with delight. "How's my favorite inventor's assistant? Your office is so high up." Lily pressed her face against the window, her breath fogging the glass. "I can see the whole world from here." Ethan set her down, watching as she explored every corner of the room, touching everything with wonder. She stopped at his framed sketches, pointing to one. "That's the one you drew at our kitchen table." "Sure is, sweetheart." He knelt beside her, remembering those late nights, drawing by lamplight after she'd gone to bed. "And now look where it's brought us." Lily turned to him, her expression suddenly serious beyond her years. "I told you your inventions were the best, Daddy." Then her face broke into a huge grin. "And now everybody knows it too." She raced back to the window, naming all the buildings she could see, making up stories about the tiny cars moving far below. Ethan watched her, his heart full. This view, this office, this new life, it was all for her. Because she believed in him when no one else did. Grace appeared in the doorway one last time, smiling at the scene before her. She caught Ethan's eye and gave him a knowing nod before quietly slipping away, leaving father and daughter to their moment. Lily pressed her hand against the glass, looking out at the city stretching to the horizon. "Can we see our house from here, Daddy?" The late afternoon sun painted golden streaks across Jefferson Park as families gathered for Hartman Industries' annual summer picnic. Smoke wafted from several grills, carrying the mouth-watering aroma of hot dogs and hamburgers through the warm air. Ethan stood at one of the main grills, expertly flipping hot dogs while wearing a Kiss the Cook apron Grace had given him as a joke. "Daddy, look what I can do!" Lily called out from the playground nearby. She hung upside down from the monkey bars, her dark pigtails dangling, while Daniel's grandchildren cheered her on. "Careful there, sweetheart," Ethan called back, though he couldn't help but smile at her fearlessness. It reminded him so much of her mother. Daniel approached the grill, holding 2 cold sodas. He handed one to Ethan and chuckled. "You know, when I hired you as a partner, I didn't expect your grilling skills to become legendary at company events." "Well, sir, years of making do with what we had taught me how to cook just about anything," Ethan replied, accepting the drink gratefully. "Drop the sir, Ethan. We're partners now, remember?" Daniel clapped him on the shoulder. "And speaking of partners, the board loved your latest proposal for expanding the medical device program to developing countries." Across the park, employees spread out on checkered blankets and gathered around picnic tables. The atmosphere was different now, warmer, more inclusive. The old hierarchy that had once divided them seemed to have melted away like ice cream in the summer heat. Grace sat with her young son at a nearby table, sharing stories with other parents. She caught Ethan's eye and raised her glass in a quiet toast. She'd been right all along about keeping faith, about perseverance. "Hot dogs are ready," Ethan called out, and a line quickly formed. As he served each person, he was met with genuine smiles and casual conversation, such a contrast to the whispers and glares of just months ago. "Mr. Cole," a young intern approached him shyly, "I just wanted to say your story inspired me to show my own designs to my supervisor." "Thank you," Ethan nodded, remembering his own fears and doubts. "Sometimes all we need is someone to believe in us," he said, glancing at Daniel, who was now pushing his youngest granddaughter on the swings. The afternoon wore on, filled with 3-legged races, face painting, and impromptu baseball games. Lily flitted between activities, her laughter mixing with the other children's voices. She'd made friends with Daniel's grandchildren, teaching them the cartwheel she'd recently mastered. From his spot by the grill, Ethan watched as employees who'd once barely acknowledged him now included their families in games and conversations. The company picnic had always been an annual tradition, but this year felt different. There was an authenticity to the interactions, a genuine sense of community. Sandra from accounting brought over her famous potato salad, insisting Ethan try it. "You've got to take a break from grilling sometime," she said with a warm smile. "Besides, my grandson wants to show you his own invention, a special robot he built for his science fair." Ethan handed over grilling duties to another colleague and joined Sandra's family. Her grandson proudly demonstrated his creation, and Ethan listened intently, offering encouragement and suggestions. He remembered his own childhood dreams, now finally realized, and felt a deep satisfaction in nurturing another young mind's creativity. As the sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the park, families gathered for the group photo. Ethan stood with Lily perched on his shoulders, her small hands resting on his head. Daniel insisted on standing next to them, his grandchildren clustered around his legs. "Everybody say, 'Hartman Industries,'" the photographer called out. "Hartman Industries," the crowd responded, laughing and jostling good-naturedly. After the photo, Ethan found a quiet moment to sit on a bench near the playground. He watched Lily playing tag with her new friends, her face flushed with joy, her eyes sparkling with the kind of carefree happiness he'd always wanted for her. The weight of their struggles, the late nights, the uncertainty, the whispered prayers for a better tomorrow seemed to lift from his shoulders. Here, in this moment, he saw the future he'd dreamed of but never quite believed possible. Lily's laughter rang out across the park as she chased Daniel's grandchildren through the grass. Her yellow sundress caught the late afternoon light, making her look like a streak of sunshine. She was happy, truly happy, and secure in a way Ethan had fought so hard to provide. Looking up at the clear blue sky, Ethan closed his eyes briefly. His heart swelled with gratitude for all that had changed, for Daniel's belief in him, for Grace's unwavering support, for the second chances that had transformed their lives. He whispered a quiet prayer of thanks, watching his daughter twirl in the summer sunshine. They had made it. Through all the doubts and struggles, they had built something beautiful. Not just a career or a position, but a future filled with promise and possibility. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Ethan Cole, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.